right, welcome to Peeps Creek, the cafe where we serve you delightful, slightly intense, but definitely worthwhile conversations. A podcast focused on bringing people together by drinking, listening, and conversing. So grab your favorite drink and let's see what's on today's menu. All right, people, welcome to Peeps Creek, the cafe. It is important here at Peeps Creek that you grab your favorite drink. And so I am going to grab my favorite drink here for today. And as you can see in this camera, look at this. Boom, 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 boom. Let me make this bigger so you all can see the beauty that is H2O. This is water, people. I am drinking on some great ice water. And Denise, what are you drinking on over there in Virginia Beach?
I'm actually drinking some coffee.
You want to show it or no?
I'm showing you the mug. How you want me to show you the coffee?
Oh, your computer froze. Sorry. All right. So you're drinking coffee. Is that decaf or black or what kind of coffee?
No, caffeinated with milk.
Caffeinated with milk. Okay. Christian, what are you drinking on here at the cafe today? What are you drinking on at the cafe?
Some H2O.
You want to show the people what you're drinking on, bro? All right, so we are on episode 37. Episode 37 is I Love You, Now Die, Michelle Carter, Needy or in Need. That is today's menu. And we are back on our crime-ish. All right, so before we get into the episode, we want to officially welcome Christian back to the podcast. Hello, Christian. You want to say hello to the people or anything you want to say in regards to being back to the podcast?
I'm back. That's all you get.
All right. Great. All right. We're excited to have you. Hopefully you have some great things to offer to it, or you probably won't be back. All right. So
I always did.
All right. So this is a documentary that was on HBO. It's called I Love You, Now Die. It's a Michelle Carter case. It is a modern age Romeo and Juliet, except for Juliet did not die with Romeo in this particular case. This is a case dealing with two individuals who were in love, quote unquote, as teenagers in the good old state of Massachusetts. They live about an hour away from each other. At some points in the documentary, we heard 40 minutes, but somewhere between 40 minutes and an hour away from each other. They had exchanged over 65,000 text messages between each other, and that is how they became, quote unquote, in love. All right.
You should say how they met.
We're going to get there.
Oh, okay.
I'm just setting this up. And so this case is about an individual who is charged with involuntary manslaughter. We'll talk about a little bit what that means, but essentially she's in charge with involuntary manslaughter based upon her text messages to the individual with whom she says she was in love with, who ultimately decided to take his own life at the age of 18. And so we are going to dive into that particular topic. All right, so who's Michelle Carter? Let's start there.
She's a girl that lives in Massachusetts and at the time was in high school. Not really a popular girl, didn't have many friends. She, from what the show says, suffered from a few mental illnesses.
Debatable, but go ahead.
But yeah, that's about it.
All right. Anything, Denise, on your end on that?
No. Yeah, I mean, what he said, Michelle Carter is just the individual that is being accused of the crime.
All right. And then we have Conrad Roy III. And so let me just take this moment to say this. I know that we are doing commentary on a documentary, and unfortunately, we are doing commentary concerning teenagers, individuals who are not adults under the law at that particular time, even though technically she should have been charged as a dark, but we'll put that aside. We are dealing with individuals who are adolescents, and one of those adolescents decided to take his own life. And so let me just say we will try our best to be respectful of his life without going too much into his medical history, only because we really don't know that much about his particular medical history, other than the little tidbits that we know from the show that was brought up in regards to the evidence that was presented in the trial. Now, I did my own independent research, but I also want to be respectful of the fact that a family lost their loved one, and particularly a young man. So we would try our best to be respectful of that. So let me just get that disclaimer out at this particular point. All right.
Can I add that the
Yep.
comments that we make during this is our own opinions, is our what we gather out of what we watched. It's not that we are necessarily saying, this is what should have happened or should have not happened.
Right.
So just making that clear for those out there.
All right.
We don't want to get messages.
Well, we do want to get messages, but
No. I mean, we don't want to get messages of those involved in the case talking about look me up.
You're still
who
with
I
that.
am.
oh my God,
Yeah, I can't let that go.
Still, oh my God, you need to let that go. Life is too
Listen,
short.
I'm a Taurus, and as Taurus, I hold on to things. I can't let them go.
Yeah, but that's not worth it. Let that go. Okay.
Moving right on.
We're moving right on. All right. So we open up in this particular series, and we immediately are introduced to Michelle Carter at the time, who's 17, Conrad Roy, who's at the time 18, and they allegedly fell in love in 2012. And I'm looking down because I'm looking at my notes because I wanted to take good notes on this particular case. They lived about an hour away. I think I've already said that. And they've only met physically 5 times or less. So we don't even know how many times they've met physically. But they've met in the good old state of Florida, right? Because their families apparently are involved in a... what you call that? Where people got money and they go to these little...
I was trying to think of that. I was just gonna say they both.
Oh, country club.
Country club. There you go.
Yes, their families were both part of a country club in Florida. I want to know if it was Trump's country club.
Anyways.
Moving right along.
You can do your own research on that later.
I know, but
Let's
I just
go on.
sitting here today, I just realized it could have been Trump's.
Perfect. Okay.
All right, but
Moving right
anyway,
along.
okay.
That would not change the outcome of what
I was
occurred.
going to change the way I present this case. No, it's like, no. All right, so they met apparently in the good old state of Florida at a country club. Michelle's family was a member there, and apparently Conrad Roy III auntie introduced them. And so however they met, whatever they met. And after they met, they kind of just started this relationship basically through text and Skype is what I gather, right?
Yeah, mostly like text.
It was a lot of text messages.
It was a virtual relationship. Long distance.
Do you think they were in love? They say they were in love. She says she loved him.
No,
I
I don't
mean-
think so.
For like any high schooler, they're like, "Oh my god, you're the love of my life," you know.
I think it was more one-sided.
Yeah.
I think that she was infatuated with him. And I think for him, it was more of I just need someone to listen.
Yeah, she had that. She created that own story, and they mentioned that on the show as well.
They do, but she doesn't. She doesn't say that. They mentioned this as their own synopsis of their interpretation of their
We'll
relationship.
get to like those messages.
Yeah, the whole thing is just interpretation, really, because we don't get to hear from Michelle. They declined to even participate in the documentary, and we do hear from the parents. But personally, I felt like everything that I was listening to and that I was looking at was based on the interpretation. You know what I mean? Like if I would have, unfortunately, I couldn't hear from Conrad what actually happened. But maybe if I would have heard from Michelle, I could have felt differently with the whole, situation.
Yeah,
It's just a very sad documentary altogether.
for Conrad.
I think for both, regardless of what occurred, it's like at the, I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's like the prosecutor said when she was doing her interview after, the decision was made, it's just a sad day for everyone. It won't bring Conrad back, but it's also a life of a person that, a young person that is now just, I don't know. That's just my personal
opinion. You're talking about Michelle?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like her life ended. It's like she's out. She got the bare minimum, to be quite honest. Like,
but we haven't got there yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't got there.
I'm like, I can't agree with that, but okay. Anyways.
I mean, we'll talk about that. But okay, so this series opens up, and as it opens up, it really just tells you that this is truly going to be about the communications that people exchange through text, right? And so we're talking about over years, and as I open this up, it was over 65,000 text messages between the two, right? So we're talking about quite a bit, but we open up with these text messages. So we get a text message that pops up on the screen from Conrad that says, "I love you so much." Michelle responds, "I love you for forever." Then there's another text message from Conrad that says, "I'm in the worst pain right now, like it's unbearable." And then Michelle responds, "I think it's time to do it now then. It's okay to be scared, and it's normal. I mean, you're about to die." Then it goes back to Michelle, and she says, "Are you going to do it?" Then Conrad responds, "I just don't know how to leave, And then it goes back to Michelle, "Say you're going to go to the store or something." And then she says, "You're overthinking." And Conrad responds, "I know I'm overthinking. I've been overthinking for a while." And she says, "I know you have to do it like you said. Are you going to do it now?" Then she goes back and says, "Drink bleach. Why don't you just drink bleach? Hang yourself, jump off a building, stab yourself. I don't know. There's a lot of ways." All right. So that's how this series opens up, right? With on the screen pops up of these communication text messages. And so right away you are aware that this case is truly going to be based upon text messages, communications, electronic communications, and not so much verbal communication. All right, what are you about to say, Denise?
No, I'm sorry. I'm having a side conversation over here.
Oh.
But I will say this. There was so many messages that were going on that I did not write them. It sounds like you actually did.
He found them online.
Oh, okay.
No. As I was watching it, I wrote them down, but then I did my own independent research. And actually, if you go and look at the due research, you can pull up all of the evidence from the cases. And so technically, I have every single text message that they ever exchanged that the cops were able to pull from the records. And so on a PDF, it's like 300 pages of
I'm sure. If it's 60,000 items that they got, I'm sure that
And that is just between the two, Conrad and Michelle. But then
that it doesn't include the ones to her friends and all the other ones.
Now, those are available. I have those too. But yes.
I actually, as I was going through it, I tried to just gather the ones that I felt were, like the one where she was saying about the bleach, or, do this or go find this or do that. Those are the ones that I actually wrote down.
All right. All right. And so then we jump into after these messages come up and for context purposes, we don't know from the documentary specifically the dates all of these messages are popping up on the screen, right? If it's something that was relevant to right before the decedent decided to take his life, it would say that. But a lot of times what would happen is these messages would just pop up and we wouldn't necessarily know the time frame, right? If you go and do your own independent research, then you can gather the time frame. But essentially what happens is the documentary jumps to 3 years later, where Michelle is charged with involuntary manslaughter. And the true question is, did her text messages to Conrad cross the legal line and make her responsible for, depending on who was talking, some people saying responsible for her friend's death, and then other people were saying responsible for her boyfriend's death. And the reason I want to bring that up is, okay, were they in a relationship? Do you think they were in a relationship, or do you think this was just Michelle's perspective of a relationship?
No, I think they were in a relationship. Even Conrad's mom at one point said it. but it wasn't like, I wouldn't say it was like a real, like, I think they were both like, yeah, we're together, but it wasn't like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like a real relationship?
Yeah, I hear you. What about you, Janice?
No, I don't think they were in a relationship. I think that Michelle wanted to, and not necessarily wanted, but she felt that because I have your attention and because I ask you, are we in a relationship? And you tell me, yeah, okay, we're in a relationship. But again, I think for him, it was more of I don't even think his mind was into wanting to have a relationship. It was more of this is a person that's outside of my family that's willing to listen to me. So if what she wants me to say is that we're in a relationship, that's what I'll say.
Yeah, so I concur with that. I think that if when you look at the messages, particularly as he gets closer to the date of his suicide, I think it's clear that there was no solidification about whether or not they were boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Because I think she even asked him at one point, when you do it, can I say that I was your girlfriend, basically, right? And so if they were truly in a relationship, I think that conversation between the two would not need to necessarily be had. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. So just for those individuals out there, so involuntary manslaughter is a legal, it is a crime, right? Every jurisdiction can decide how it wants to define what involuntary manslaughter is. But in the District of Massachusetts, or in the state of Massachusetts, it is about wanton or reckless behavior, and that is conduct, meaning that you are actually doing something, or it's wanton or reckless inability or refusal to do something. So in other words, if it's an action that you are actually doing that is wanton or reckless that leads to an individual dying, that could be involuntary manslaughter. Or if you do not do something to prevent the wanton or reckless conduct from resulting in a individual losing their life, that in and of itself could be involuntary manslaughter, right? So basically what it is this. It says, based on, if it's an objective measure, it's based on a defendant's actions constitutes wanton and reckless conduct if an ordinary normal person under the same circumstances would have realized the gravity of the danger. And if it's based upon a subjective, and that means based upon the individual, the defendant's own knowledge, grave danger to others must have been apparent. In other words, the person who's been charged must know that the defendant, that there is a risk that can happen, that someone can lose their life, and they know that risk, they appreciate that risk, but they don't do anything to avert that risk. So that's basically where we are. And so we are in the situation where one individual, Michelle Carter, is basically saying, look, at least her defense is saying, I have the right to say what I want in text messages. I wasn't there. Like, I was 100, how many miles away? I was an hour away. I didn't force Conrad to get into the vehicle. I didn't force Conrad to decide to take his life. And my words, even if taken as true, does not make me guilty of manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter. Right?
Yeah.
Is that where we are? Everybody agree with that?
Yeah, that's exactly what the lawyer kept saying, Yeah, she could have texted him whatever she texted him, but she didn't physically push him into the vehicle. She didn't buy the items that he purchased to kill himself, so she's not guilty.
Right. And so let's talk a little bit about some of these text messages. So Conrad apparently, and again, I don't want to speak for him because I don't know him. I don't know his family. I haven't communicated with his family. But what was presented in the documentary is that Conrad suffered from some anxiety, depression, and some other internal issues. And he had attempted suicide twice before.
Yeah.
Right? At one point, he attempted to try to drown himself. Now, I don't know if the documentary shows this, but when you read the Supreme Court decision from Massachusetts, you get all of these details. At one particular point, he tried to kill himself by going underwater, standing underwater, but then he came back up and he said, at least as the court indicated in its opinion, that he needed fresh air. So he didn't want to, he stopped the process of committing suicide because he felt like he just needed to come get fresh air. Another time is that he had an overdose of Tylenol, right?
Yeah, the one with the pool was not mentioned in the documentary.
But the Tylenol
Only
is.
the
Yes.
So when you look at when you do the independent research, you find out all these other factors. But in the documentary, they only highlight the Tylenol. And so that Tylenol, I think they highlighted because it showed at least symmetry between the two, because Michelle allegedly had her own issues. And at one point she had communicated via text to a friend that she wanted to commit suicide. And she actually had a noose and she was in the closet, but she didn't really put the noose around her neck, but she was going to hang herself. Is what I gather. Am I mistaking that?
No, that's what they said.
No, yeah, that's what they said. And
She didn't put it around her neck, right?
I don't think she tried to kill herself.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I don't think. I think I don't think she went as far as to do it. But if I'm not mistaken, I think the documentary does mention that he attempted suicide up to 4 times. Because I think I wrote it down. So they did mention that it was more than once, and I think that they may have mentioned the one with the pills because he happened to talk to her through text messages after it happened.
Right.
Yeah,
About
saying that like it doesn't work, like you can't over.
Yeah,
you
that
can't
it
die
didn't
from
work.
Yeah.
He was in the hospital, and so she didn't know where he was for the whole week and all of that.
Right. And yeah, I don't know how this case was just like, it's unfortunate because it's teenagers, right? But let me just say this for the record. I really don't like Michelle. I felt.
For the record, that's his personal opinion. If anybody out there is listening,
Oh yeah, I don't like her. I really don't care. I don't
I'm just
like
saying
her.
in case we have somebody messaging us.
I don't like her. I felt like she was a liar. I felt like she was trying to manipulate the system. I felt like in regards to her, I just felt like it was a slap in the face of the fact that you knew. I don't think you get around the fact that she knew that Conrad suffered from depression. I think if you look at the text messages between the two, you get that very clear from him that I'm suffering from these demons, right? These demons of I need to go away. I don't know if I need to go away at this particular date, but I feel like I have so many issues. And then even in the documentary, they show a video of him, and I don't know if it's on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, and he's talking about the fact that he suffers from this depression, right? And that he feels like he has the social anxiety and he's like constantly battling himself with it. I just feel like she knew that and she latched onto that and she manipulated it and used it. And so because of that, I don't know, I had no sympathy for her. I know she's a kid, but kids can be manipulative.
I think she knew what she was doing. At one point, at least.
What's your thought process?
I have no doubts that to a certain degree, she knew what she was doing. I don't agree with the fact that I personally feel that they both latched onto each other because they both knew that each was dealing with these issues, right? I think that had one person been dealing with the depression and the other one was, perfectly fine, I don't even think their relationship would have lasted the 2 years that it actually did. Because being that they were so far apart, I don't think that they would have, made efforts to continue. But I think the fact that they were both mentally going through problems is what made them latch onto each other. I don't particularly feel or think that it was once she started seeing those videos of him that she decided to latch on to him. I think that she knew way before that, what was going on. And it gravitated towards each other because they could relate to each other of what they were going through.
Okay. Well,
Now,
let's-
I will say,
go ahead.
by all means, don't think that I agree with what she did or what not. I don't know if it's because I tend to kind of try to put myself in, in their shoes as I'm reviewing it or listening to it, that I feel that although she knew what she was doing, I don't know. I'm still, we can continue. Maybe I can gather my thoughts as we keep on talking.
Yeah, but I think that point is clear. I think that point is pivotal, though. You said before you cut off and not knowing where you want to go, and that's fine. But you said, even though I think she knew what she was doing, I feel like that is the point. The point is that even if she was suffering from something, she knew what she was doing. And if you look at the text messages, even the text messages outside of what was presented on the documentary, it's a barrage of, are you going to do it now? Like, why are you not going to do it now? Like, you need to do it now. You told me you're going to do this now. Why can't you do this now? Like, oh my fucking God, you're just going to keep backing out. And it's like, okay, are you really concerned about this individual, or are you concerned about your story that's going to come about as a result of what this individual does? And I think it's the latter and not the former. I don't think she really cared about his health and his well-being. I feel like she was concerned about the story that she was going to be able to latch onto after he did X, Y, and Z. I mean, that's just the way I feel.
And that's, okay, so I think I gather my thoughts now. So I agree that she knew what she was doing when she tells him to get back into the vehicle, right? But I feel that what they're trying to portray, and a person even said this as the documentary is going on, is that at the end of the day, all she wanted was that story, right? I don't personally feel that that's what she wanted to get out of it. I don't think that she kept on telling him, get back into the vehicle, kill yourself, just so at the end she could be like, oh, I'm the girlfriend that lost the boyfriend. I don't think that was her intentions. I think we also need to point out, because this was not pointed out until almost the middle of the documentary, that, again, they've known each other for 2 years. And throughout the 2 years, he constantly kept mentioning that he wanted to kill himself. And at the beginning of the relationship, or at the beginning of whatever it is that they had, she kept trying to get him help. She kept trying to tell him, maybe you need to go to a hospital. Maybe you need to do this. It's not towards the end of those 2 years that she starts pressuring him into doing it. So I think we need to mention that too. It wasn't that throughout the entire time she kept telling him, kill yourself. At the beginning, she tried to do something, it just didn't work. So it's almost at the end now that, who knows? We don't know what she was thinking. Maybe she's like, you continue to do this, you continue to tell me, just do it. Again, that's just what I'm thinking. It's not, what she may have thought. But
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Now that you guys are all mentioning this, I don't know if this is one of the parts that stuck with me, and I'm gonna just say it now. I think that for her, she wanted not like a perfect love story, but I think she was infatuated with the show she was watching, because they mentioned it in the show as well that she quoted actresses in Glee when Corey Monteith died, and his thing was suicide.
Fought Beneath Our Stars or whatever with that movie.
But yeah, I think she wanted that same type of I do think that at the end of it, she wanted to be like the girlfriend that lost her boyfriend, to suicide, and she wanted all that attention. Everything that she did afterwards was all for attention, and she got it. And I think that she felt fulfilled it in some way.
Anyhow, so she get charged with involuntary manslaughter, as she should. Okay. My opinion, she should have given charged with more. She got charged with involuntary manslaughter. And so here's what I want people to understand, just some of the intricacies, because I don't want this just to be about us discussing a documentary. I feel like we have more to offer than just this is what the documentary says. But it's also an opportunity to educate the listeners, the viewers, on the processes that undercurts our criminal justice system. And so what happens is that there is a grand jury. And so for those of you who don't know what a grand jury is, which you should, you probably heard about it throughout, but you really don't know. You probably don't know about the intricacies. But the grand jury is a proceeding that's in secret, right? People are called to be a part of the grand jury. It is secret. The public typically does not know until there's a decision. But the grand jury hears certain evidence, and their job is to determine whether or not there needs to be an indictment. An indictment is basically saying, look, we've heard this, and we think there's enough for the state to move forward with trying to prove its case against you. Okay, so that's what that happened. She was charged with involuntary manslaughter. After the indictment, what happens is that her lawyers then go to the Supreme Court of Massachusetts and says to them, look, Massachusetts does not criminalize suicide, right? Okay, we don't criminalize suicide. And she was a minor, right? And so we don't think that this indictment is accurate. So the Supreme Court goes through it. They go through her text message. When you look at the opinion, it's like a 14-page opinion. They go through exercises. They go through the text messages, and they basically says, look, involuntary manslaughter is not about, right? It's not about the person being there saying, do this, right? It's about whether or not the actions of that person contribute to the end result. And that contribution would have been, in this particular case, the text messages, the barrage of text messages saying, hey, kill yourself, do X, Y, and Z, right? Now, they were not weighing in on the evidence because we haven't got to trial yet. But this case, the reason I bring this up is that this case went through a series of steps even before it went to the trial. Even after the trial, it went through a series of steps. And I'm going to say this, and people might not like it, but if you ain't got money, it's not going through all those series of steps. Yeah. Right? Your indictment from the grand jury is typically what you are going to be presented with at trial. And when you are at trial, 9 times out of 10, if you don't have money, if you don't have influence, and you don't have wealth, you're not going to be out in bail so that you can present and prepare for the defense of your case. And I think that this particular case highlights the power that money, affluence provides you, because she had all of that. She was able to go through and go through the appellate process for the purposes of the indictment alone before we even get to trial. And then when we get to trial, we'll talk about this, but she was basically out on bail the whole time.
Not once was she like arrested. Or
exactly.
Anything,
yeah.
And people weren't happy about that.
No, and her bail was only $2,500. Yeah. Now, black folks can go to, I don't want to make this a race thing, but it is what it is. Like, you go downtown and you can go sit in, now that COVID is here, you can't, but you can go sit in any courtroom that's public, and you can see people being denied bail left and right, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for crimes that are not even murder. Yeah. Or someone doesn't even lose their life as a result. Like, for instance, drug crimes, right? And people are locked up in jail without the ability to prepare for the defense of their case because they just don't have the money to do. And so this case bothered me in so many arenas. So I know I'm coming off like an a-hole with her, but I just felt like there's so many things that this case highlighted about the inconsistencies in our justice system sometimes with regard to wealth and influence. And we need to recognize that, and it's important to say that. But
yeah, no, and even at the end when she actually, like at the end of the show when they, what's it called at the end of like the hearing, the verdict, like they were trying to appeal it and she was still out. Yeah. She didn't go straight in, even though they said that she had to do, I'm gonna just say, go do some time.
And I don't think you're coming off as an asshole. I think that it has to be said.
Yeah.
Because it not only happened with her, it continues to happen. And it's happened with so many other people.
Yeah.
You know, and it was crazy. It was indeed crazy because, like you said, had it been my son who had done that, trust me, he wouldn't have gotten everything that she got. You know what I mean?
No, not at all. Not at all. Like it's ridiculous. And I mean, even at the arraignment hearing, you see her facial expressions. Like this was she was bigger, okay, before she went and either got a surgery or lost weight. One of the two.
Okay.
Well, if you don't remember,
Go ahead.
when they first showed her, the reporter said she came, looking like she got a tan, like she went to the tanning booth.
Oh, she did all that.
Got a tan.
She got her eyebrows done. She got fillers in her lips. She lost weight, and I don't know if she lost that because she was stressed out, or she was exercising, or she got some kind of surgery. We don't know.
They said that she had an eating disorder. I'm pretty sure that was.
But they also said she had an eating disorder at the time that she was bigger.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
I don't know.
She's had that eating disorder since she was 8.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. Allegedly.
I mean, we didn't hear from her at all, but I'm not denying it. I'm like, yeah, it looked like she went and got her hair done for trial.
She definitely got her eyebrows done. That wasn't from bulimic, for being an eating disorder.
Yeah.
You don't, just because you have an eating disorder, no offense, no shade, no tea, no disrespect for people who are dealing with it, but your eyebrows don't immaculately get darker and arched up.
True. This is
honestly, she didn't look good with them done.
She did not.
Why are you
We're
yelling?
going way out of.
I know. Wait. Last thing. I know we're already in the topic. I'm telling
not.
you, there are a few people that have gone to jail and stuff, and they've been scouted by model agencies and stuff. Like this guy named Jeremy Hicks or whatever his name is.
Yes, the guy with all the tattoos.
Yes. I'm like, she could have been a model.
But
but now all her chances are gone.
No, he was convicted and he still became a model.
I know, but no one's gonna want to hire her.
I'm just saying.
Anyways,
I don't think she looked good with those eyebrows.
I thought they were.
She looked odd and weird.
I said it from the beginning to you guys. I thought she was pretty.
So let's go to the trial. So we've talked about several cases in here, and I know I've talked about several cases where I would have opted to have the judge decide versus a jury. And I think this is the first case that we've talked about where the judge, where the defendant actually says, I want to waive my right to a jury.
Yeah.
Right? And so what do you all think about that?
It was smart on her case.
Well, I'm going to quote what they said in the documentary. Genius decision. Genius decision for real. Because had she left it up to the jury, and it's exactly what he said. He said the Jason guy that you mentioned, I think it was the Jason. He said a jury of your peers often does not know the law as much as they know their own emotions and how their emotions apply the facts that are put in front of them. And when he said that, I was like, that's me. Because I will act so on my emotions, and it was a genius decision because had she left it up to a jury, she would have been guilty. I don't know. I can't say, right? But I personally feel she would have.
I disagree. I think she would have been, I felt like she would have been better off with a jury. Because
you think they would have felt some of the emotions by her? At
least two of them. At least one of two would have said she should not have. This ain't her. Yes, it's immoral, but it ain't a crime. And you think about where we are. We're in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is not a liberal state. Like, you're thinking about the First Amendment and all of that. And so then it gets to people like, okay, how far does this cross the line? Like, if I say to somebody at a bar, go kill yourself, fuck you, bitch, and they go and kill themselves, am I going to be responsible for that murder or that crime? Like, and so I feel like at least one person on that jury panel potentially could have held out and say, no, she's not guilty. And
I agree.
That could have led to at least a hung jury, or that juror could have convinced other people to flip and say, "This, you don't want this." Like, think about if your kid was in the same situation and then they're brought before, they're hauled into court because of this. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's a good point. Because
Yeah.
even when they were going around the town and asking people what they thought about the case, some guy said the same thing you just said.
yeah, I
It's
mean,
like, if I tell someone to jump off a cliff, are they gonna?
right. And you saw those people who were husband and wife, they were going around. The wife felt like she shouldn't be responsible. The husband felt like he should be responsible.
Yeah.
She should be. So
Wait, did you guys see that with the lady in the car? She had that accent. She was like 902 on a piece
Yes.
of crap. When she said it
I
was her
wrote that
accent.
down. I
Me
was
too.
like, wow.
and that was the lady that was in Conrad City.
Yeah.
But what the documentary doesn't show, and my independent research revealed,
We got it.
Right. If he says independent research one
one
more time.
Okay. But apparently, where if what's this chick name? Michelle Carter and Conrad never would have been in Florida. These two never would have interacted because the people who lived in Michelle City felt like the people who lived in Conrad City were like trash and beneath them.
Yeah.
So they were seen less than. And I don't know if you recall in the documentary, I think it was the grandma or someone of Conrad was basically like when they heard of her or saw the family, they thought they were like uppity, like someone important. And that's because there's like that other side of the railroad tracks syndrome, right? You go to Chicago, for instance, on one side of the railroad tracks, it's affluence, it's money. On the other side, it's like, we don't want to go there type of thing. And so we also have that dynamic, which I think if it could potentially have played a role in her psyche in regards to, I think someone said it was either in the expose I read, because I don't think it was in the documentary, but they were saying that Conrad was exotic to her because he was different. It was something that she wasn't used to in her city, right? Because we were not accustomed. We would never like hang out with these people. We don't go to school with them. We wouldn't even play them in sports type of thing. You know what I mean? Which potentially could play in that.
I know what you mean because, I hate to say it, but that was me growing up. You know what I mean? Like growing up, you get to meet people from different cities and it's like, I have a friend in that city and he likes me. And you know what I mean? It's like I don't know if this is just a female thing, but we want to show off, and especially if he was prohibited, and not prohibited, but if it was like you're saying it, then it gives me more like, oh, she's messing with a bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the trial. So we get into the trial. She decides to waive her right. And you saw the only time that we hear from her is when the judge asked her, was she coerced and did she understand that she was waiving her right to a jury by her peers? And she says...
No. Or yes.
Yes, she understands it. She wasn't
And
coerced,
that
right?
was it.
All right. So she forgoes her right to a trial by jury by her peers. She decides to do a bench trial. We see the prosecution. We kind of hear bits and pieces of their opening statements, and we'll talk about the presentation between the two in a minute. But then we hear the first witness that the prosecution called is Camden Roy, who is Conrad's. Oh no, they call her the mother first, but we only see like a spurt of her testimony, right?
Yeah, they showed his picture. They showed her his picture when he got the license, the captain license, and asked her, I think it was how old was he when he got it or something like that, because he had gotten it a couple of months prior to the suicide. And I think there was one other question, and that was really it.
It was if she could point at
Michelle.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that we forgot and help me remember, but I think that at the beginning, the officers involved mentioned that this probably never would have even been, I don't know what the word is, had they not taken that cell phone, because they didn't, necessarily need to take any evidence because it was suicide, right?
Right. So we'll get to that. I think we can tie that into the trial because that's something that I want to bring up as well. But actually, you know what? Let's step back and let's just do that now because we don't see. I'm not sure if the detectives actually testify or not because we don't see that in documentary.
I don't remember them. Yeah.
But what we find out is that Conrad decides to take his life on January the 12th, 2014. He decides to take his life by getting a
generator.
Is it a generator? What is it?
I don't know.
I think it's a generator.
Yeah.
Something.
That's what they mentioned.
It creates carbon monoxide.
And so he gets into his vehicle. He goes to a Super Kmart parking lot. He parks his vehicle. He turns on this generator that is exuding carbon monoxide inside his vehicle. And essentially he asphyxiate himself with carbon monoxide. Okay. Now, that's the end result, right? What we find out is that when the officers arrive to the scene, they identify that it appears as if it's an apparent suicide, right? And they see his cell phone and the vehicle with him. And the officers were debating whether or not they should take the cell phone because it's apparent suicide. You don't, what more do you need to do, right? And so, but for the fact that they decided to take the cell phone, they probably would not have known about the connection with Michelle, right? Because it's only after they decide, you know what, let's take the cell phone. The cell phone is dead, right? And then they go back, they charge it up, and apparently they pop up the messages, and one of the first people that they see is Michelle Carter, right? And then they start reading these messages, and then they basically be like, holy shit, like this is more than just a guy who decided to take his life. He might have been pushed to take his life, basically. Does anyone disagree with that?
No, that's what.
Yeah, I think you said it. When the thing came up, her message was the one highlighted. So as they start going through it, they were like, wait,
Yeah. And so then they go to the school to get herself to talk to her. And this is the other thing. Like, I just don't like her. I'm sorry. They go and talk to her at the school, and when you hear her and her response, she act like she don't even know him, like she barely know him. Oh yeah, we talked. Yeah, he did say, when was the last time you talked to him? I don't really know. I think it was like the other night. And I'm like, chick, you were literally texting him the night before, when you're going to do it, the day of, when you're going to do it, you need to do it now. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to do it now then. You're right.
Well, we're forgetting the fact that they were on the phone twice.
Yes, during that time. Yeah. Right. And they talked on the phone for at least 92 minutes. 47 minutes one time, 40-something minutes a second time. And the prosecution alleges that it was the last phone call that she actually heard him dying as he was committing suicide in his vehicle, right?
Yeah.
We hear that. That is at least it's a position. And so when you hear, I don't know, it just really bothered me, like her approach about it when they went to go talk to her about him. And it wasn't like there was any concern, like any care. Yeah. I just didn't get any of that.
And it goes back to the whole her showing no emotion throughout the case or the trial. Like, she had no remorse towards what she did. She only really cared about herself.
Nah. All right. So, Denise, you wanted to say something?
Yes. I just want to make it clear that we are not making any judgment about a person's medical condition or lack thereof. But we're just simply providing commentary on what was presented in the HBO documentary. So we may have our opinions about how we personally perceive the evidence, but that's just exactly what it is, our opinions.
All right, exactly. And my opinion is she ain't had no medical condition that impacted her. All right, moving on. Sorry, moving on. Like, if I was a juror, guilty. All right.
Well, me too.
Exactly.
I would have definitely said guilty too. But
All right. But at the trial, we hear from the mom. We've already talked about her. We also hear from the sister. I think her name is Cameron or Camden. And Camden talks about text messages that Michelle sends her the night before. Conrad decides to commit suicide. Actually, no, I take that back. It was actually an hour after his death that this text message was sent. And she sent a text message to Camden saying, "Hey, Camden, it's Michelle Carter. I don't know if you remember me, but I'm dating your brother again. Ha ha. Does your mother know where he is?" Okay. This is after.
Like, that's so... Oh, my God.
This is after all the text messages she had up to the point to tell him where to go, because she actually tells him in a text message, go to a parking lot. Okay, and he goes to a Kmart. And this is after she's on the phone with him for over 80 minutes while he is in the process of trying to commit suicide. And she sends this message. And then the next day, she sends a message says, "Find him yet?" And then Camden says no. And then Michelle says, "Okay, just stay positive. Let me know." Like, okay, who does that?
A psychopath.
somebody that has issues. But let's not also forget that she not just did that an hour after. It's like they said, she tested the waters 2 days
Before he even
before
died.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, before
like
before he
text
committed
messages,
suicide, she sent a message to her friend, knowing it was fucking a lie. But in the same time that she was sending a text message to Conrad, she sends a text message to her friend and said, "Oh my God, Conrad is missing."
Yeah.
Who does that?
Or even like after she sent the text message saying that like, "Oh, it's my fault. Like I told him to kill himself."
Well, that's after, but that's what got her in the steamy water.
Yeah.
But who does that? Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you knowing that what you're sending to your friend is a lie about a person missing, and then you also communicate with the same person even before Conrad commits suicide, and you say, "Oh, I think it's going to turn out bad." Basically, what she says to the friend, right?
Yeah, she technically, yeah.
So this is why I have no sympathy for her. Now, granted, I don't want, going back to what you said, there could be some medical issues that could have impacted her right to know right from wrong. Unfortunately, we didn't hear any of that, so I'm going to discount that like the judge did. Okay. we hear that. I'm not just going to give her that. Okay. I ain't hear no evidence of that. So, she had no. She was testing the waters, as the prosecution says, and I know that the journalist, when you read his expose, he takes a different position. He doesn't think she was testing water. He thinks that she was living in a fantasy world, and all of that. So he is more in line with you, but yeah, none of that evidence is brought up.
I want to say had it not been for him in this documentary, I could have been persuaded in so many different directions. I felt that his comments, his point of view is what made me look at the situation totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was a good journalist.
Because I don't think anyone would have like put those two together with her like quoting like shows and stuff. No one. It was him that mentioned that, right?
Yeah, and what he says in his expose is that he was there. He covered this case from the very beginning, even before it was sensationalized, even before all these journalists was there. So he met like with the girl Alice and all of that, and did an interview with her. And so we'll talk about that too if we have enough time. But anyhow, I agree with you. I think he did a very good job. I don't agree with everything he says in regards to his interpretation of her, but I think that he did a phenomenal job of putting into perspective potentially the world that these two were operating in, right? Because as you indicated, I think because we're older, and maybe we feel like we would never do anything like that, like our mindset is a little different, right? The bubble that we're operating on or operating in is a little different. So I agree with you wholeheartedly with that. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So then we hear from all of these friends, right? There's friends, allegedly friends of Michelle that comes up, right? And
Yeah, I don't even call them friends.
yeah, because basically the prosecutor was like, "Did y'all hang out before all of this?" And they was like, "Yeah, no, she was a
No.
pest." Like,
They didn't say she was a
so in so many words, basically, she always wanted to hang out. She was needy, and always needed somebody around, and always wanted to be involved. And yeah, we had our own life going on, and she wasn't it, basically. Okay, that's what we
This
did.
is not exactly what they said.
That's
This
the
is his
gist.
interpretation.
Okay, but is that not the gist of what y'all got from it?
Yeah.
Okay, and it wasn't until Conrad passed, right, that they felt sorry for her, and this was the first time that one of the girls actually slept over her house.
Yeah, but Sam had a relationship with her.
No, Sam
prior.
did not. Sam did not. Sam did not have a relationship with her. Sam received text messages from her, and Sam felt like
Let's
it was.
clarify that. Yes, you're right.
Sam felt like it would be rude for her not to respond to these text messages, but they did not have a close relationship as Michelle presented it.
Yeah, I don't think none of those girls had a friend. Honestly, again, I don't think she had friends.
She didn't.
I think that she was.
She ain't had no friends.
Yeah, she was in these different, like she was in the softball, she was in whatever club she was in. So these are just people that she's met through it,
Didn't
and
nobody
she's
know
had
her.
a conversation.
They
Okay.
were just
But she was very
schoolmates.
clingy.
Yeah, they were
Like
just
all those messages, I would have been like, "Girl, like get a life and leave me alone."
Yeah, so she didn't do that. Okay, she ain't had no friends. And
Yeah, she
then
didn't.
here's the clincher, right? The clincher of this case is that she sends Sam. See, this is what happens when you're guilty because you start doing stuff that you shouldn't do, right? She sends Sam a text message that basically says, "Oh my God, I could have stopped it." Right? If it wasn't for me, I told him to get back into the fucking car, but for me, he would still be alive. That's the text message that she sent Sam. Right? Now, why is this important? It's important because when you pull the records of Conrad's phone and Michelle's phone, all you get to see is the amount of time that they spent communicating. What you don't get is the substance of that communication. Okay. And so she decides to send a message to someone else. And because she sends that message to someone else, you get to use that against her because she is a defendant in the case. Right? We've talked about hearsay before, right? That's out of court statement, blah, blah, blah. But there is an exception to hearsay, and it's called party opponent. Basically means that if you are a defendant in the case and you send a message to someone else, that hearsay is no longer hearsay because it is a message from you or a statement from you. And so that's why they were able to bring that in as evidence to show the truth of that conversation. And the truth of that conversation is that he got scared and he said, "I can't do this." And you basically told him, "Suck it up and get back in there and do what you need to do." Right?
basically.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah. Very sad.
I mean, it's like, and what annoys me is like when you read the opinion. We'll come to that. Okay, so they say that she says that, right? And there's nothing that she can do to refute that at this point because she's not on the stand, right? And Sam testifies to the fact that she received the message. The message is on big screen in the courtroom. Right?
Yeah.
Nothing you can do. So the prosecution rests, and then the defendant bring their case. So they bring this expert who come up with some bullshit, basically. Okay, I'm just gonna say bullshit.
Expert's a strong word.
Well, he was first of all he was qualified as an expert. For those of you who don't know anything about how this works, it is a rigmarole to get someone qualified as an expert. You have to go through a whole lot. Okay, he was qualified as an expert in this case. Okay, he goes and talks about some bullshit that nobody believes. Okay, we put that aside. Basically, what he says is that she was involuntarily intoxicated, and Conrad's messages to her was pulling her further into this intoxication because she was on Prozac, and then they changed it to Celexa, and because of that change in medication, it was like too much, and then she went into this intoxicated state. Okay,
Did he say though that she was switched like a couple of months before this happened?
He was trying to say that on July 2nd is when the involuntary intoxication occurred, because that's when the switch apparently occurred. So maybe 2 weeks before, not even 2 weeks, 10 days before Conrad commits suicide. This chick had her medicine change on the 2nd, allegedly, but that doesn't speak for the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th, the 12th.
Yeah, but
after he commits suicide, then the 13th, 14th, 16th, 17th, 18th, then these text messages to Sam, then the text message to the best friend. Hey, I want to do homers for Conrad. Why are you doing it in this city and not the city he actually lived in? Oh, you trying to take my credit. I mean, what do you think? You agree? You think Michelle has some problems?
No, I think that doctor didn't know what he was talking about. I think Michelle knew what she was doing the whole time.
Okay. Then the judge makes his decision. And what is the decision in the case?
Guilty.
Guilty, right?
After 2 days, he reached his verdict.
His verdict in 2 days. But we need to put some perspective to what this guilty verdict meant. So what the judge says is, yes, there was a lot of text messages. There were a lot of text messages up until the point where Conrad decided to take his own life. That essentially one would look at and say that she was essentially trying to force him to take his life, right? The judge did not find her guilty because of those text messages, those words that she was using. Kill yourself, take bleach. Why don't you use a generator? Why don't you do this? Go here, do it now, this day. Why don't you do it now? What are you waiting on? You're taking too long. Those messages, as insightful as they were, and as disturbing as they were for people who are reading them, including myself, including his family, I'm presuming, those text messages in and of themselves were not enough to say that it caused wanton or reckless behavior, conduct, right? Now, what sealed the deal for the judge, however, is that at the moment that he got out of the car, so there was a point in time where Conrad got out of the vehicle after using the device that he had determined to use to take his life. He got out of the vehicle, and apparently he was in pain, and he communicated and called Michelle. Okay. At the moment that he contacted her, he broke the chain of, this is my will to do this. This is what I want to do. He broke that chain. He communicated with her. And at that time, because she took the call, she communicated with him. And instead of contacting the police, instead of trying to talk him out of it, instead of calling his mom, his brother, or his sister, or his granddad, she decides to tell him to get back in the vehicle and essentially suck it up and do the deed, right? And it was at that point that she took the call and she understood what was going on, that she had a duty to act. And she did not act reasonably, as a reasonable person would have in her shoes, to prevent him from continuing with his plan to commit suicide, right? And it's because of that situation that she was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, right?
Yep.
And why is that important? Because had she not sent that text message to Sam Boardroom or Boredom, or what was that girl name? Sam.
I don't know her last name.
Had she not sent that text message, I don't think we would have the same verdict.
Agree.
Right? Because the judge looked at all those text messages. We had all those text messages. It was not those text messages that caused him to make the determination that she was guilty of involuntary manslaughter. It was on July 12th, 2014, after that phone call, the first phone call when he got out of the vehicle, that connected her duty to act. And her failure to do that and her conduct thereafter, basically inciting him to go back into the vehicle, was the conduct that caused her to be latched to involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah, and I agree with him. I think that, I mean, since the beginning, that's what always stood out to me. The fact that he came out of the car and she kept telling him to go back in. And that just breaks my heart. And I agree. You know, she had a duty at that. She had a duty since day one, personally, in my opinion. If somebody is on your phone texting you so much, telling you that they want to do this, come on now. You know, at what point do you sit there and say, this person really needs help, you know, or I need to try to find them some help? But I agree. I think that by her telling him to get back in and not trying to get him some help, he was already saying, you know, it's getting to me. You know what I mean? Like the carbon monoxide is getting to me. And he came out. That means that he wanted to live. You know what I mean? Somebody who wants to really commit suicide is not going to get out of that car, because that's the purpose of me doing this. Yeah. Right.
And that paralleled, I think, when you read, because so ultimately she's found guilty. So I'll say this. She's found guilty, right? Then we go to the sentencing, and she's sentenced to what?
A minimum of like 2 years?
She's sentenced to 24 months, right? Mm-hmm. With 15 months to be served, and the remainder to be, the balance of that to be for basically washed off, and to 2022, right? Essentially.
Yeah.
Okay. But at the same time that her sentencing is given, her defense issues a motion to say that they want to go through appeals, and they request that she be let out on bail during the balance of, or during the time that her process is working its way through in the appellate process, right? So the judge agrees. He says that this is a situation that he thinks that the appellate division will want to weigh in on, which I think is fair, given the nuanced area of the crime that she's been charged with. So I do think that's fair that he would want to receive opinions from the higher court. And they ask that she's out on bail during that time, and he grants that. Right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you all heard this, but when they came out of the courtroom from that point, one of the reporters basically says, you know, what if this doesn't finish until 2022? Conceivably, she wouldn't spend one single day in court. I mean, in jail.
I don't remember that.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. So had the appellate process did not work itself out and it extended into 2022, then technically she would not have to serve, and they would have ruled, or even no matter how they would have ruled, she wouldn't spend a day in jail, because remember, the judge says that the sentence expires in 2022. Okay.
Crazy.
So anyhow, at the end of the day, what happens is it goes through the appellate process. And he does say that it only go through the state process. Okay. Which I thought was a better decision in regards to that. But anyhow, so she goes to the Supreme Court, basically says, like, look, there's no way I could have been found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The Supreme Court said, nah, chick, you're going to jail, basically. So that happened in February 2019. She starts serving her sentence. She goes into jail. Remember, she's supposed to be serving 15 months. She gets out less than 12, technically, because she gets out in February 2020.
No, she gets out January.
Oh, January 23rd.
Yeah, she only did 11.
So she gets out less than 12 months because of good behavior, because she was a model.
Good conduct.
Yeah, she was
model inmate.
She was a model inmate, okay? Because she didn't have her cell phone. She couldn't send all these crazy ass messages. That's probably why. All right. So anyhow, she was a model inmate. She gets out. Now, what we do know is that she is incapable of making any money on this story until at least 2022. So it's going to be interesting to see in 2022 if she comes out and try to tell her story so that she can make money off of it. So she does go to the Supreme Court of the United States, though, to ask them to overturn her conviction. But I think
Really?
Yeah. In January 2020, the Supreme Court declined to hear her case. So she still is convicted.
That is something they didn't mention in the documentary either.
No, that's my independent research.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
IR.
that's where we are. I'm sorry.
IR.
Oh, my IR. That's where we are with that particular case.
But I will say, the wording coming from him is what irritated me, right? The independent research, how constantly he kept on saying it.
Right.
But I'm glad that he did it because, again, I feel that these documentaries of stuff, I don't know if it's because they crunched in time or they want to edit it the way they want to edit it so we can get something out of it. But had he not done that research, there's a whole lot of things that we would have never known.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. I will say that they could have made this into a 1-episode documentary, not a 2-episode. Like half the time it was just text messages.
The second episode was kind of a waste.
Yeah.
A waste
That's
of
why
time.
I stopped with the text messages because I was like, okay, that's just too many.
Yeah.
But I will say this: there's another case going on like this. You guys know?
No. Where? Who?
Yeah, there's another case going on. It's in the Suffolk Superior Court in Boston. She's facing involuntary manslaughter for the death of Alexander Utola. He took his own life on the day of his Boston College graduation, and her name is In Young Yu. It's currently going on.
Oh, wow. So this is going to be interesting. We can have another follow-on topic on this. Okay. So thank you for that. I didn't know that.
I feel that's just important for us to mention that if anyone is dealing with, suicide thoughts or something like that, they can always reach out to the National Suicide Hotline. And I do want to say the number, 1-800-273-8255. We just never know who.
And even if you don't think you fall in that category, if there are moments in time where you feel like you can't operate in the space that you're in, it is always a good reason to find someone or speak to someone who is a professional who might be able to help you get through that. Mental health is important, and speaking to someone is important, and so do that, please, because you never know. You just might need an uninterested party to tell you something that you just haven't heard before, or maybe you heard it from your family, but they're your family, and you just need to hear it from someone else. So yeah, get the help that you need. All right, so that is episode 37. I Love You Now Die, Michelle Carter, Needy or in Need. Continue to make sure that you reach out to us on Facebook. That is Peeps Creek Café. Make sure that you reach out to us on YouTube. That is Peeps Creek Podcast on YouTube.
Oh my God.
You can get us on Instagram, on Twitter, and TikTok at Peeps Creek. Our TikTok has been slacking because this one right here has not been doing his TikTok duties. All right. But hopefully they come up. You can get us on Instagram. Did I say that? Because this one right here, she's supposed to be ahead of IG, but she's been slacking too.
I've been very busy at work.
Okay. Mm-hmm. This is your job. All right. You can text us.
Let's not go into this again.
You can text and call us at 202-618-0043. You can send us an email at cafe@peepscreek.com. That's right. We have our own email associated with our organization because we are official. And you can contact us on our website, www.peepscreek.com. You can check out you can check out all of our episodes on there. We have them there. When we stream these videos live every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can view it there as well as Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. And on the heels of Twitch, you can also contact us on Twitch at Peeps Creek. All right. Anything else?
Nope.
You can buy us coffee through our website.
You can buy us coffee through our website. All right. Until next time, continue to do what? Drink, listen, and converse. Look at that water. Look at that water. Look at that water. Look at that camera. Look at that camera. All right. Let's go over here. Denise, are you done with your coffee? You want to show your coffee cup?
I'm way done with the coffee.
All right.
Like 2 hours ago.
All right. You want to show that coffee cup? Thank you. Get some excitement. All right. You can get that. You want to bring bring it up just a little bit?
It's good. These are old Peeps Creek mugs.
Okay. All right. So until next time, continue to drink, listen, and converse. And Denise, peace and
Out.
oh my God, why do you do this every episode?
It's her thing.
It's peace and love.
It could be peace and love to you. It's peace and out to me.
All right. Until next time, peace and
Out.
love.